Hi, Dr. LaDonna Raeh here with WVON. Joining us now is the mayor of Gary, Indiana, Mayor Eddie Melton. Since the devastating storm swept through Northwest Indiana, Mayor Melton has been leading the city's response, coordinating with emergency management officials, NIPSCO, and the Indiana National Guard. The state leaders, as thousands of residents work to recover from one of the largest power outages in Indiana's history. Today, I spent the day on the ground in Gary, speaking with residents, visiting neighborhoods, businesses. I even spoke to Karen Freeman Wilson, the president of Chicago Urban League. Here's the thing. Welcome to the show, first of all.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Of course, of course. It's really sad to see that there was not a lot of coverage on this early on. But I definitely spending the day going through Gary, seeing what's going on. I saw trees ripped from the ground, barely missing some houses and hitting other buildings. Businesses struggling to operate on generators. Long lines of people simply trying to get something to eat at a White Castle on Broadway. I spoke with residents who have been without electricity for nearly 4 days. They aren't getting frustrated, they're getting exhausted. What's the current state of Gary in your own words? And what do you want people outside of the city to understand about what your residents are experiencing?
Yeah, well, thank you for the opportunity. It's been challenging for everyone, but I think we, as an administration, my entire team, have been working hard every day, day in, day out, around the clock. So, police, fire, our general services team. So, listen, it doesn't stop from getting trees off of homes, off of cars, rescuing folks from trailer parks and things of that nature. This is something we've been doing, like you said, for the last 4 days. With that being said, I did declare a natural disaster for the city. That triggered state resources. Now the governor has declared a natural disaster for the state of Indiana. And now we now have the National Guard that has come in. So we have been able to multiply our efforts. This being the largest power outage that NIPSCO, our utility company, has had. They have brought in over 200 contractors from around other states. So we are working. Gary is a very large city. Of course, we're not going to be able to get to everyone at the same exact time, but we had to first assess the damage. We had to address all of the critical infrastructure pieces, our hospitals, our police stations, our fire stations, our senior citizen buildings and things of that nature, to make sure that when NIPSCO does come, they can access the power line and get the grid back up and running.
I met a grandmother that's working at a gas station, and she fought back tears describing what the last 4 days have been like. I met another man preparing to barbecue everything in his freezer before it spoiled. This stopped feeling like a power outage and started feeling more like humanitarian as an issue. What concerns you the most about the people who are still without electricity tonight?
Well, just know that we're all in this together. I'm sitting in City Hall right now without power. So from um, our residents to our businesses that are struggling, we all have to understand that this is not just a Gary, this is a regional situation. So there, all of our resources as municipalities and cities across the Northwest Indiana are being stretched to ensure that we're doing it the right way, the safe way, because a lot of these folks that work are putting their lives on the line when they're actually leaving their homes and their family is still stuck in the dark and they're either have a tree on their roof as well too. So I want to commend all of those workers and people that are doing this day in and day out to make sure that the residents have a safe and healthy environment. So just be patient with all of the situation. I know it's very challenging and difficult, but I have faith that God's going to see us through.
One thing I kept hearing today was we've never seen anything like this. At the same time, storms are becoming more frequent and more severe. Even Chicago Urban League president Karen Freeman Wilson mentioned that there's old infrastructure in Gary. Did this disaster expose gaps in preparedness? And what lessons is Gary already learning before this recovery is even complete?
Right. So a lot of that infrastructure we've been already starting to replace, such from an electrical side. Of course, our sewer systems are nearly 100 years old, but that's something that we're working on getting the right amount of resources, state and federal, to address that. But I think as communities, we need to think resiliency. How do we build resilient neighborhoods, looking at solar energy, looking at other grid opportunities to reinforce, to make sure that we have backup opportunities, backup generation in the future. So our critical infrastructure, our sanitary district, our hospitals, our police and fire stations, our community centers, so people can have heating, warming, and cooling centers are well taken care of. Looking at food options, making sure that we have ways that we can get water, clothes, and food to residents, diapers, Pampers, all of these things in dire straits. We got to make sure that we have a plan in the future to address that issue.
As someone who's taking care of my father, who depends on oxygen, I
Mhm.
couldn't stop thinking about people whose lives literally depend on electricity. What is the city doing to identify, if anything at all, and assist seniors, residents with disabilities, and people who
Mhm.
rely on electrically powered medical equipment?
Yeah, we set up spaces for that. For example, the YWCA on 15th Avenue, a lot of folks are charging their pacemakers or charging the oxygen tanks. We just got a new supply in the fire department where we're able to refill oxygen tanks for residents.
Mm,
So that's something that we have been very intentional on visiting our senior high rises and call 911. You know, the hospital is still open. If it's a life threatening situation in terms of health and safety, we want to tell folks to call 911. It's still coming, they're still working. So that hasn't changed a bit.
yeah.
So, yeah.
I I'm glad that softens my heart because it's the first thing I think about. Just 2 weeks ago, I had to call 911 because my father had a brownout. I'd never seen anything like that. The lights were dim, but we couldn't get
Mhm,
any power from anywhere. So
mhm,
911 had to come and get him, take him to the hospital. But in Gary's case, on Wednesday afternoon, I called one of your hospitals and they were without power in very specific areas. I don't know how that was handled. The media communications individual, they have not yet gotten back to me, but I'm sure it's because they're dealing with all of this this disaster. But how do we get ahead of this for the next go round? Because the weather reports, anytime it says rain, it simply pours.
right. Well, I think that's something we want to get through today first, right? As we're preparing to get through today, make sure families, our senior citizen population, those with disabilities are safe, secure, but getting information out where resources are located. And that's why I appreciate this opportunity to do so. So calling 211 has been triggered for from a county and state level. If you have trees on your home, if you have trees and debris on the cars, 211 is the number now where the National Guard is helping to go get those that debris off. 311 is a city number that can still help you in terms of non-emergency situations. If they're that you need assistance right away, that we are scheduling, we're tracking that information. And of course, 911 is always the best location. Checking our social media pages, we're frequently posting where to get food, where to get essentials for your household. If you go check it right now, you'll see at least close to a half a dozen locations where folks can pick up non-perishable food items and other things as well. We've brought in a lot of our food trucks, right, to set up at different
Mm.
stations across the city. The city is paying for some of them to be out a little bit longer than normal. So we got different hot spots where folks can pick up food, like a 15th and Broadway, off of Fifth Avenue, in the Glen Park area as well. That we're looking for new locations to transport and get these resources and options out there.
Nice. I stopped at Gary Housing Authority and spoke to the president, and he was so gracious. We dropped off some water, but just the people around there, everyone's coming together. And many listeners are in Chicago and the South suburbs, and they want to help, but don't know where to begin. What does Gary need most right now, and where should people direct their donations, volunteer efforts,
Yeah.
or resources?
I think right now, if you're a contractor, if you have heavy equipment, we need as many people as possible that can come out and help remove debris and trees. We're designating as specific sites throughout the city where residents can take their branches and trees and it's in a safe way. That's an extremely important way. We don't want folks touching or going near power lines and trying to cut the tree. We want to communicate with the utility company to make sure that that power is totally disconnected and cut off before any of that cutting takes place. So again, everyone has been patient and is working extremely hard. I want to thank you all for your support.
I love it. One last thing, and I'll have to let you go. When I first learned about this on Wednesday afternoon, I searched for news coverage and found almost nothing. That's what sent me to Gary today. Do you think this disaster received the attention it deserved? And what role does media play during emergencies like this?
Well, I've done a number of Chicagoland media outlets. I'm not going to list them all here. I don't want to read off competitors or anything like that. I think we have been getting the coverage. It may not have started immediately
Right.
um, during post the storm, but definitely the next day. We had the press conference with the governor of Indiana and some mayors and other elected officials and National Guard and Department of Homeland Security. So it's starting to pick up now. So we just encourage folks, uh, you know, to learn as much as you can about the safety aspect of it on all of our outlets. We want folks to know where the resources are.
Thank you so much, Mayor Eddie Melton, for being the best mayor that Gary has to offer in this time of need and everything that's going on. Thank you so much for being poised, taking care of our people, removing the state lines. And as I've said throughout today's coverage, this isn't just a Gary story, it's a human story.
Thank you.
We'll see
Thank
you
you.
next
God
time.
bless. All right.
Of course, same to you.